Welcome to the Fantasy Football Fanalist Podcast, presented by Fantasy Data. Here's your hosts, Billy Muzio and Bradley Stalder.
Welcome, everybody, to the Fantasy Football Fanalist Podcast presented by Fantasy Data. We have a special episode tonight. We're going to be joined by the GOAT District boys. We have JD, Dan, Theo, and Shelly. And I was typing out this intro, and I realized I don't know Shelly's real name. And I had to go through and the podcast that we had done in the past where he introduces himself. And lo and behold, it's Andrew, right? And I reached out to him. I'm like, do you want me to introduce you as Andrew or Shelly? And he's like, no, you can just call me Shelly. And so I just want to say, welcome, boys. Thanks for joining the pod, and it's great to have you guys on.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us, man.
Great. Thanks, Billy.
Yep.
All right.
For sure.
So I want to jump into some questions here. At any time, feel free to divulge as much as you'd like. We can dig in deeper. We can lead away from the pre-scripted questions as well. This is an open floor, meant to just open dialogue in regards to week 11, as well as just any football burning questions that we may have. So I want to start with Thursday Night Football. So Cordell Patterson suffers an ankle injury week 10. He's been my sweet prince and my league savior in a lot of areas. And he's trending in the wrong direction. So what does this offense look like without the gadget player on the field? JD?
Yeah, I mean, thanks for having us. By the way, guys, this is an honor. I know you want to get right into it, but I want to acknowledge you guys inviting the whole crew on. We're big fans of the show and big fan of what you guys do. Billy, I will say, is in my perception probably one of the hardest workers I think out in fantasy land, based on what I can see. Yeah, man, just an honor to be on today and pumped to talk football, especially with you guys this time of year. It's a fun time of year because in your leagues, there's a bigger difference between those bottom teams and those top teams, right? I find like the first few weeks, everybody thinks they're contenders, so it's harder to get trades done. But now it's getting a little clearer on who needs to start what I called Reno mode and who needs to, go for it and start making big moves. So I love this time of year. Patterson, same as you, brother. Got him for $1 in a few leagues, FFPC off of the wire, and paid off nicely. And man, isn't it nice when one of your big guys goes down and you have that piece that you got at such a value to pop in there, and he was producing nicely. So this offense needed that spark. Now they've lost both, their top two targets, their top two talents, players on that roster. I mean, you look at the backfield, not so great. Mike Davis, one of 9 top 24 weeks that he's given up year to date. So for me, at best, he's like RB3 flex, maybe. Yeah, I get they're getting playing time, but right now Atlanta is the 25th in scoring in the NFL, and I like to tie my backs to a scoring offense. I want my back to get a lot of scoring opportunities. So as much as maybe bye week or injuries, these are guys that you hopefully have as depth pieces. I wouldn't want to be relying necessarily on them myself.
How about you, Theo? What do you think this offense looks like without our savior, Cordell Patterson?
So I don't think it looks very good. I think that, if you have Kyle Pitts, you're firing him up, but he's taken a step back the last couple of weeks. I'm a little bit intrigued by Wayne Gallman. I think I'll be putting a lot of bids in for Wayne Goldman. Dearness Johnson had 157 combined yards this past week against the Patriots. So I think it could be a volume RB2 type play for Gallman. It would be a little optimistic to see him finishing anything higher than that, but I think he'll get a high number of touches if Patterson does miss, and I think he will miss. Patterson's certainly going to try to play, I think, because the guy's having a career year late in his NFL career. He's a tough player, but I think the team would be crazy to put him out there on a short week, banged up. So I'm slightly intrigued by Wayne Goldman. It could turn into a Carlos Hyde type start where he ends up with single digit points, but I think if you're in need of a running back, I think that this is a guy you can bid on this week with hope that he gets 15 to 20 touches.
Theo, don't tell him about our trade that we made like literally Sunday morning.
I won't do that. I won't do
Tell
that,
about
JD.
Tell him about it.
I cashed out on for Daryl's season, and I got a 2022 first from JD. I gave him back the 2022 second.
Yeah, late first for early second. It's all right. It's all good.
It didn't work out that well Sunday, but I think it was still a smart move for both of us. We have to be injury agnostic in this game, and things happen. So, but I'm a Gallman guy. I'm bidding for Gallman.
Dan, Shelley, anything to add?
Well, I mean, you couldn't pay me enough to start Matt Ryan this week. $1
million.
Didn't he get negative points this week or something?
Depending on your league, you might have. Because JD and I have a league where we have Cousins and we have Matt Ryan. And no matter what happens, we always start the wrong one. So actually, since I'm saying there's no way I'm starting Matt Ryan, that means Matt Ryan is probably the play this week because we'll be starting Cousins. So for those of you who like to play off of those kind of things, there you go. And I'm with you on Wayne Gallman. He's somebody who's interesting to me, if only just because so many of the other guys on this offense have proven that they suck, and he hasn't really proven that yet. I thought Mike Davis was overdrafted. There's no question, but I didn't ever expect him to be this crappy. To the point where he's just absolutely unusable for fantasy. That even is a shock to me. So yeah, if you're in a hard spot, Gallman, Pitts, of course, you'll play. And other than that, I'm really trying to stay far away from the offense.
Hey Dan, if they hate your take so much, fade you and become a millionaire, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, go out and do it then.
The problem is I can't fade my own takes because it doesn't work like that.
A millionaire. Yeah.
But I'll add this, guys. Gallman gave you 6 RB2 and 3 RB1 weeks last year. So, I mean, Dan taught me one thing, and we'll talk about this later with a couple of guys. Like, I want them to prove to me that they belong in my lineup. Sometimes you're desperate, right? But Dan's kind of taught me that. And I want someone just in general. I've always, I'll pick the guy who's done it before, who's proved it on an NFL field before anything else. So, if you want to look back to the past a bit, I mean, at least Gallman's shown you some flashes there.
So looking back at our FFPC rosters, there's been 3 scenarios this year that I can specifically remember where we had owned one of the top priority waiver ads prior to the week and dropped him the week of heading into Sunday to pick up another player. The 3 players to mention were Elijah Mitchell, Eno Benjamin, and now we have Wayne Gallman. So Wayne Gallman was a stash that we held in most of our leagues, especially in the leagues that we owned Patterson as the handcuff, because we believed that Gallman was going to be that replacement had anything happened to Patterson. And you take a look at this game and what happened after he exited, and he actually led the backfield in snaps. So 23 snaps versus Mike Davis 20. He saw 42.6% snap share, 62.5% rush share, and then an 8.7% target share. And that was against 5% versus Mike Davis and 20% rush, or 16.7% rush share for Mike Davis. So Wayne Gallman seems to be the favorite here if Patterson is out come week 11. He does have 3 down ability, as we saw in replacement for Barkley when he was with the Giants. And quite frankly, I thought he was actually going to be a back to own in this Niners backfield. I talked up all year about a sneaky candidate to stash during that season as well. So I like the Wayne Gallman take. I think that he is going to be productive if Patterson is out. I would not be surprised to see him lead this backfield. Bradley, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I've got one more thing to add, I suppose, that we shouldn't think that Gallman is going to fall into the full Patterson role anyways. Patterson had been getting 7 targets and 7 rushes a game. I don't think that Gallman is going to fall into that type of category. Instead, we saw Gallman get double-digit carries in lieu of Patterson being out. So it's going to be more between the tackles. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's more of Mike Davis taking the pass catching role in that Atlanta offense and Gallman more between the tackles instead of Patterson taking, splitting those pretty evenly. And that's what we saw in New York last year. We saw double-digit carries and not a lot of passing work. Yes, he could handle some targets, but in the majority of the games where he subbed in for Barkley, there were only 3 games where he had at least 4 targets. So I don't think there's a real ceiling for Gallman. Like, you're picking him up off the waiver wire as like a flex, maybe a running back too. There's not a lot of optimism, as we mentioned earlier, in this Atlanta offense for achieving anywhere close to running back 1 numbers, even in a weekly basis.
Well, we also have to take into consideration that they're playing the Patriots, who their defense has been, phenomenal these last couple weeks, which kind of rolls us right into the next question. Is they've won 4 straight games against the Jets, Chargers, Panthers, and Browns. What do you think is going right now in New England? Let's go backwards this time. Shelley, why don't you lead it off?
Belichick's putting his rookie in positions to succeed. I mean, I think it's almost as simple as that. I don't think that they're asking him to do too much. I think he's executing, in a vacuum. I don't think that we're excited about any one of their skill position players. The wide receivers I don't think it would have excited us if, maybe they're good, like wide receiver 3 options on like great, teams otherwise. But maybe there's just something in that Bill Belichick system. So I think it's a lot of the putting people in positions to succeed, allowing the rookie to get comfortable at first, slowly opening up the playbook. And obviously it looked great last week. Now, having said that, they like to beat up on the crappy teams, like the Jets. But I just, I like the way things are clicking. Although I will say, well, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. Let me just pause there, because I did take offense to one of the other questions about him being the steal of the draft. When I think about by a quarterback here in Jacksonville.
What the heck?
JD's had some technical difficulties.
I have no idea what's happening. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
All right. I might have to just switch it to my laptop camera. I'm not sure what that means. That's a new one.
I was just looking up the quarterbacks the Patriots have played against.
Yeah.
You can take me off if you want, Billy.
All right, we'll do.
And I'd agree with you, Dan, on the quarterbacks, right? But Justin Herbert's in there, and like I said, like they're beating up on some crappy teams, but Belichick's doing a good job of scheming things open, of getting these guys who aren't just like the most electric of playmakers, and somehow it's working. I mean, like the team aspect, right? I mean, you just do like the Jacoby Myers business of him not scoring a touchdown and how the whole team erupted. It looks like, for whatever it's worth, I don't know how you stat this one up, but good team chemistry seems to be at least showing some effects on the field.
Dan, what do you think? What's going right in New England right now?
Yeah, I think, Belichick is kind of playing it the way he did when Brady was young, and he's just letting his quarterback be the game manager. He's relying on his defense, and he has a collection of okay playmakers, but mostly relying on the running game. I mean, Kendrick Bourne, I think, was definitely a sneaky signing. I really thought it was going to be Aguilar that would do better, but Kendrick Bourne has been out of the free agent signings, the one who's really done the best. I saw a stat earlier today that he's like he's a strong wide receiver 2 over the last 7 weeks or something like that, for fantasy. So I was trying to find that stat before it came to me, and I couldn't, but I'll see if I can dig it up before we get done talking about them. But I think the main thing is just relying on that defense. And, by the way, in fantasy, if you have the capacity to make trades, try to get the New England defense thrown in on one of your trades, because it's worthwhile.
I think that's a great call by Dan on just the way that they're handling their pieces and kind of maximizing their personnel. But I do think that they're kind of an underrated team in general. If you take a step back and you look at their season, they lost by 1 point in week 1 to the Dolphins. Then they had the Tom Brady game where they lost by 2 points to Tampa Bay. And then we had that classic against Dallas where it went to overtime and they lost. So, I mean, they could have a gaudy record at this point if a couple of things bounce their way. And that Miami game, especially, that was like the Damian Harris fumble that basically cost them the game. So I'm a little more bullish on New England than some might be. I think they're a good football team with a good defense and a great coach. And Mac Jones, Billy and I were talking before the show in the pre-show about the things he's doing so well. He was 19 for 23 this past weekend. He threw 3 touchdown passes. He looks good. I think he kind of lacks a ceiling based on not having the too many explosive playmakers on offense. But he certainly looks like a guy who's poised and accurate, and he's got a coaching staff that's maximizing his abilities. So, fantasy-wise, besides maybe a certain rookie running back that we'll talk about soon, they don't have a whole lot of intriguing guys. I mean, Hunter Henry's doing some nice things. Jacoby Myers is what he is, but I like Mac Jones, and I just like the makeup of the team.
I'll throw in the Patriots, if you believe in them, have 2 games left against the Bills, right, to where they can almost control their destiny. Bills right now, if I'm looking at it, minus 750 odds to win the AFC East. Patriots plus 400. So I think, and obviously we just saw the Bills, lose to the Jaguars. Now, obviously they turned around again this week. Maybe that was just a, week 9 thing. But plus 400, if you do believe in the Patriots and you do believe in the Belichick knows what he's doing, would be interested in taking those odds. Again, depending on whether you think they can take, maybe 2 of 2 or at least 1 of 2 from the Bills here down the home stretch.
So this is something that Bradley and I discussed on the last show is is the AFC East getting interesting, right? And with how well they've been playing, and with how Bill Belichick schemes, it's safe to say that they have a shot. So I agree with you, Shelley. That's an interesting bet. I think the biggest thing for this team that's been going right is the defense. I mean, you look at what they've done the last couple of weeks. So in the last 2 weeks, weeks 9 and 10, they've had 2 top 6 finishes in defense. So week 9, they were number 3, and then now number 6 here for week 10. And that's all the defenses combined for both weeks where they sit in scoring. So to have 2 top 6 in 2 weeks is fantastic. And you take a look at it, and I think it's from them switching from man coverage into zone and taking a look at what they've done to kind of mask their cornerback issues, because that's where their weakness was on defense, was their secondary. And by them switching into zone and giving up less big plays, to their opponents, they're not being beaten as frequently down the field. So I think that this defense has really played top notch for them. I mean, yes, the offense is clicking as well. And you've had players like Romandre Stevenson step up. You've had, Mac Jones, who's been playing lights out. But I think that at the end of the day, this defense is what has, won this team championships before and is starting to step up again here in 2021. Bradley?
Yeah, I think Mac Jones here has been what every team hoped all the other rookie quarterbacks would be. He's in PFF grade among quarterbacks, he's 7th in passing grade, like in the same range as Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert. And that's not what the Patriots were planning at the beginning of the year. If you remember, it was Cam Newton. And then they cut Cam Newton because Mac Jones was learning the playbook. And in fact, it was Josh McDaniels who was scheming plays in the preseason for Mac Jones to scripting plays. And so I think that that's what's been successful is Mac Jones is a very smart quarterback. He's able to make the throws that he needs to. He has a 69% completion percentage, doesn't make a lot of mental errors. And that's what's going to get them a lot more wins is a very strong defense that many of you have talked about. And he doesn't make the mistakes in the games where against Dallas and against the Browns, those were his highest graded games. So he really has stepped up this year. He's improved game by game. We've seen that. And I don't think that can be said for a lot of the other rookie quarterbacks. No other rookie quarterback is in, as I'm looking here, in the top 28 of PFF grade among quarterbacks that qualify. So, I mean, this has been a revelation. It's great for the Patriots and immediately puts them into contention. And as was mentioned earlier, they seem to control their destiny. So, yeah, they've got some really great pieces. And another one is rookie Romandre Stevenson. So, Billy, you want to transition us there?
Yeah. So is Romandre Stevenson the back to own now in this backfield? I mean, we saw Damian Harris limited in this practice today in his return for Thursday. Are you completely avoiding this backfield moving forward? Is it back to the hoodie days where we just never know who's going to be the starter and who's going to produce?
I think it's if Damian Harris is healthy, he's going to get the first run at it. But if he's not healthy, we saw against the Browns, it's Romandre Stevenson. Like, they've preferred to go with a majority one carrier so far. But if there are mistakes made, we've seen Belichick pull them. So, yeah, it seems majority, I think, will still go to Harris as long as he's healthy. But, I mean, the Patriots have to be encouraged with what they saw out of Stevenson against the Browns.
Yeah, I'm with Bradley on that one. I think that they're definitely encouraged with Stevenson. I think it's going to be, even if a great point by Wheeler in the chat, about it could be a potential split. But I think that Stevenson would get enough receiving work, even in a 50-50 split, that he's fantasy viable. He's a very good-looking pass catcher for a big back. And for a 250-pound back to have that sort of receiving ability and that sort of burst, I mean, he's a very intriguing player. That he could be very, very effective, even on 50% of the touches. But I think that the offense is looking for playmakers, and I think that Stevenson is that versatile kind of talent. We've seen Belichick use Brandon Bolden this season. I think that those touches are going to Stevenson, and also Harris has had a few untimely fumbles. So I think there's a chance that Stevenson takes this job, and I think the fact that Harris's situation is up in the air is going to keep his price lower on some waiver wires. I would be very aggressive going and getting Romandre Stevenson on leagues that he's available for you. Andrew and I were talking this morning about how we had Romandre Stevenson on our very good main event team, and we cut him because he had such a slow start. And I think a lot of people did that with Romandre Stevenson, and I really wish we still had him. I mean, he was a hard guy to keep through by Mageddon and all those weeks, but it's kind of hard to put it back in the bag. And we all saw how good he was in the preseason. So, it's starting to happen right now. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not so quick to discard Damian Harris as the lead back here. I think that's still going to be the case. But, the leash is a lot shorter. There's no doubt about that. Harris has proved he belonged. But we also know that, Belichick – he struggles playing rookies at running back a lot. So I'm starting Damian Harris if he starts in this game, but I'm doing it a lot less confidently. If I have other options, I'm more willing to look at those. So he's dropped a bit for me. But yeah, basically Stevenson's got everything you want to see out of a player except for the speed. I mean, he doesn't have long speed, but we've had plenty of running backs who've proven, you can make a career without really having that long speed. What do you think, Shelley?
Yep. Self-flagellation says I'm whipping myself and saying I lack discipline. So, no, I mean, Theo nailed it. And look, we were all saying it, so I don't want to belabor the point, but I think it'll be a split here. The issue, of course, of the split, when we think about costs and trends and all that, is the Harris arrow is slightly pointing maybe sideways or slightly down, and the Stevenson's potentially pointing more upward. So that's the only thing that I'm kicking myself there about. And I think that obviously, especially when we're in the end game now, would love to have had an opportunity to have both, because if one's out, I think that I feel really confident. But if they're both in, I think that, for the builds that I did, I'm probably fitting either one of them into the RB2 slot here in the upcoming weeks.
So are we all in agreement? JJ Taylor's a healthy scratch if Damian Harris, Bolden, and Stevenson. I think that's all we can agree on here, because we just don't know. I mean, you look at snap counts even this week, JJ Taylor still had 19.4 snap counts. So it seems to be they're going to get all three involved on any given week, regardless of who's in. It's just a matter of who that fourth man is every week and who's going to be in or out.
I'm not going to agree to that, just in case Bolden's the fourth guy out. So I'm going to be contrarian there. I'm going to say JJ Taylor in, Bolden out.
All right,
Billy, I'm blaming you for these tech issues. You made me go on my camera and look on the menu, so my battery plug keeps popping out. Anyways, go to the next topic.
Okay, let's move forward. Let's predict the score. So let's just go around, starting with JD. Final score. So over under for the week is 47.5. New England are 7-point favorites. What do you think the final score is going to be, and who are you picking?
35-10, New England.
Okay, under. Okay, Shelly.
Under for me as well. However, I'm fading the public, not Dan, but I'm fading the public and becoming a millionaire here. I'm going to go Falcons +7. You're never as bad as your worst game, even though you look really bad last week. Obviously there's always overcorrections here. The fact that it's a full 7 is great.
And
so I'm going to go 23-17, which I think math is good. Puts me at 6. And also I think that it's going to be relatively low scoring. So the backdoor cover is always a good play, especially when you have the full touchdown with the Falcons here.
Okay, Dan.
I'm going 33-13 with the defensive score by the Patriots.
Ooh, I like it.
I like that a lot. I'm going to go 27-17. I think the Patriots will control the game, and it will be a kind of a boring Thursday night game.
And I was close. I was 24-17 Patriots. Bradley?
Yeah, 24-13. I'll take the under, and I agree it's going to be boring. Not excited for this Thursday night game.
It's Thursday night football. We never expect anything but boring. So
watch. It's like 17-12 Falcons.
I'm gonna laugh when this game's like 52 to 48.
Yeah,
it's like the highest scoring game of the year or something. Yeah,
it's gonna be like that LA San Fran game. Remember, everybody thought that, I think it was the first one of the season. Everybody thought it'd be this big defensive game, and it was this huge blow up.
Marquise Goodwin game. That was a Marquise Goodwin game. Getting behind the defense. That was a fun one.
Well, it's going over because we all took the under here. 6 unders, 1 Falcons, 1 push, 4 Patriots.
All right, moving on here. Elijah Mitchell broke his finger apparently last night. Nobody saw it, but he had a procedure done today. His status for Week 12 is unknown. All doctors are optimistic. If he is unable to play, how do you foresee this backfield to shake up? Rank these players in order: Jeff Wilson, JaMycal Hasty, and the forgotten Trey Sermon. Theo?
Jeff Wilson, for me, would see a sizable number of carries. I think that Hasty would see the passing down work. Wilson would be the one who could potentially be usable in fantasy. I mean, he definitely would be the goal line and short yardage guy. And he looked pretty explosive to me. He looked good running the football, but I wouldn't discount Mitchell. I know a lot of times we think this is just like an optimistic thing, and they say he might play. Like 6th round draft picks that get opportunities are going to do whatever they can to get on the field. And we've seen Mitchell get the questionable tag before and come out and play well. There was a couple week stretch where I was stashing Hasty thinking that Mitchell would miss a game, and it didn't happen. So I think that if Mitchell's out, I'll look to Jeff Wilson. But I wouldn't put Mitchell missing as a slam dunk.
I think Wheeler's onto something here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Wilson
juice
and Kyle Juszczyk.
Juszczyk, there you go.
So we take a look at snap counts. Mitchell dominated snaps last week, 52.9%, 61.4% of the rushing share. Second fiddle, of course, was Jeff Wilson here at 32.4. I should say, actually, the leading snap count was Kyle Juszczyk at 58.8%, but a lot of that's blocking and he is, getting some targets. But I would say in terms of fantasy points, I'm going to say Wilson here and then Hasty. I just have no faith in Trey Sermon.
And we saw Wilson, going back to my little simple theory, 4 RB1 weeks last year from Wilson. So again, he's done it in this offense. But yeah, I agree with Theo. I think Wilson gets most of it. Hasty's probably the last guy I want on the list. At least Sermon has a bit of upside. I mean, he hasn't shown anything, but he's got the unknown, I guess, as a rookie.
I'll go a little bit contrarian here. I'll say if Hasty plays, that's probably the guy I want. Wilson to me just looked he looked kind of slow and rusty. Last night, I guess it was. So it was just I was expecting to see him kind of slamming in there a little bit harder, like we saw last year. And I just wasn't really seeing that. So I wasn't overly impressed with what was going on there. I think Trey Sermon would have to have the bubonic plague sweep through the locker room before he could get back in the game.
Could have just used COVID.
Yeah, well, or COVID, yeah. I was trying to stay off the hot button issues, So anyway, yeah, I mean, honestly, I think Hasty would be kind of an under the radar play if he's active, but I don't know that he'll be active. I don't know. I haven't heard anything about whether he's going to be practicing this week or not.
Bradley?
And not that you're not going to play him, but I think that there's also going to be some rushes, increased rushes thrown Debo's way. If in fact Mitchell doesn't play. We saw last night Debo got 5 rushes and oftentimes did let him. This was not a scheduled tweet. Billy did not put this in the show notes. I'm doing this on my own. I'm not being paid extra for this. But Debo.
But he was ready with the sounder.
He was ready.
That was fantastic. Fantastic timing.
Every time we talk about Debo, I'm like, I'm so excited about Debo.
I got to get one of those for when I talk about Debo on our show.
Great. Now you've encouraged me.
This is dangerous. Debo was an offseason love for Billy and offseason like for me, but I don't think he'll get 5 rushes a game, even with Mitchell out, but will he see 3, 4? Possibly. He lined up in the backfield. There were some formations designed for Debo, and they've got Shanahan's using Debo. He's just trying to manufacture touches for him. Like, he only had 5 targets, Debo did last night, but still 10 total touches. I do agree, if I have to pick a running back, I think it's Jeff Wilson. He has the pedigree, he has the history. He's been used as the goal line back before in this offense. He's been used as the full-time back before. So I see a lot of different ways in which Wilson could be successful in this offense if Mitchell's out. But if Mitchell's healthy, he needs to be started as a running back 2, if not low-end running back 1.
It's the Jaguars this week. It's going to be name your RB1, healthy Mitchell, Wilson. And then it's going to be the diet of Juszczyk and Debo and whoever the hell else. I mean, first of all, I will be there. I'll be pre-gaming doubles at Manifest Distillery. No free ads, though. Hopefully they send me some bottles on the side. Nevertheless, I'll be there. I just think that they're gonna go up on a pick 6 or something, and they are just going to be pounding the rock and just maybe using the absolute full stable this weekend, depending on who's available. So I think I agree with everything that's been said, but just it's going to maybe even be a further split just because they're going to be running the ball so often or designed type run plays.
Since we're talking about my dear sweet Debo, does this mean, is he inside your guys' top 10 on dynasty rankings? Because I'm all aboard the Debo train.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to try to get your opinion on that.
He's my 10.
Talking about that.
He's my 10.
Talking about that on Twitter.
I was talking with Scott last night on it about Twitter. I think he's he had him just ahead of AJ Brown. That one's a tough one for me. I think AJ Brown is talented. He's just been injury plagued, but one could say the same about Debo prior to this year. I think that to me was an interesting discussion. Trade offer is sitting inside your league right now in Dynasty. You have Debo and someone offers you AJ Brown. Which side are you taking?
Smash accept.
I'll take AJ Brown.
Yeah, I think everyone here takes AJ Brown, but I'll add this, Joe, just on Debo. Our buddy it's a Beeb, right? Skywalker, the double champ back to back, 6 digits. Rocking the fantasy world. He talked about on their 1st and 15th about guys that the coaches, the coordinators plan the offense around, right, and scheme in different positions in different areas. And when we talked about Debo on our show, he's my most owned dynasty players. These guys are sick of me talking about it, but I talked about 2 years ago in the Super Bowl. They had him playing everywhere. He was the whole offense, and that's the most important game of the year. So to me, the same coach, same offense. They've added a couple pieces, but at the end of the day, they're using him the same way and more now. So you can't deny what's happening. That offense is through Debo, and to me, he's a top 10. I put him right at number 10.
So they have what's like workhorses in the running back stables. Is there anything that you can add there for the wide receivers? Is there a
Billy, where's
is
the
there
horse?
is there a workhorse wide receiver? Because that's Debo. So I'm going to be contrarian here. You send me AJ Brown and I have Debo, I'm declining. And I'm taking a look at AJ Brown, his injuries that he's had. He just hasn't been the same. Bradley's giving me the face, and I don't care. Give it to me, Bradley.
I'll give you something else if my family wouldn't watch this video.
And now, if Shanahan loses his job, this might change, right? Because I agree with JD. It's based upon the system, the schemes that Shanahan builds for Debo Samuel, right? And I think that's also why we're not seeing Ayuk having the year that people anticipated him having because of these schemes. But that being said, we have now seen AJ Brown be slid into a wide receiver 1 role with no one else in this offense to take away any meaningful target share or coverage at that point. But that being said, he has failed to produce so far up to date. He's had a couple big games, but outside that, what has he really done to put himself ahead of Debo Samuel?
All right.
That's a serious question.
I will not stand for this slander.
Thank you.
All right, Dan, defend it. Let's hear it.
All right. So, well, in the last game, AJ Brown actually did catch a touchdown if it were not for an illegal procedure call.
Oh, so it was called back? So
it was called back.
Okay.
Yeah. And, and I'm going to agree with you to this point. Debo is definitely getting schemed the ball much better than AJ Brown is right now. In a vacuum, talent-wise, I'm going to take AJ Brown every time. But the thing is, Debo is really susceptible to falling into the same sort of thing as AJ Brown has fallen into. And we saw, when AJ Brown burst onto the scene, he was basically very Debo Samuels like. He was a yak monster. I mean, every time he caught the ball, he was taking it to the house, and just looked like Debo. And so I worry a little bit about, the scheme of the offense in Tennessee. But, if I think they're close enough, that if you say, okay, well, when their free agents say they go to a real desirable location, I'd be wanting to follow AJ Brown to wherever he goes more so than Debo. I just think he's got that talent. I would like to see Tannehill start to unlock that a little bit, but we just, we haven't seen it. But then their offense is just, 2 weeks away from losing Derrick Henry. So I think there's still time for it to morph and change.
Man, you touched base on a beautiful point here, that how similar they are in a yard after the catch. And I just want to say, although they are similar, they're very far apart, because AJ Brown is about 66% less than Debo at yards after the catch. I think it was about 5.6 versus 9.3. And so, yes, very similar, but a very distant second in that category.
If I could add one more thing about Debo, I would not accept a trade if someone was offering me Debo for my AJ Brown. And I think it has to do with the context of the types of injuries that they've dealt with in their history. Like if we're playing Dynasty and I'm making a bet on a player, I'd rather have take a bet on a player he produced the type of numbers he did last year on 2 messed up knees than the type of injuries that Debo's had over the last 3 years, like groin strains, foot fracture, Jones fracture, that has a high likelihood of recurring even more significantly, hamstring strains, calf strains. These are soft tissue issues. And Debo is a year and a half, almost 2 years older than AJ Brown. So I'd rather have the longevity. I'd rather have a player who, even though he's had difficulty, like I want that pure talent. And this is a new offensive coordinator for the Tennessee Titans. So of course they're going to get used to not scheming AJ Brown or working around it. So I'm not worried about AJ Brown right now. I think it's more of a long-term play. But ride the Debo wave. Like he's the better play week to week right now in 2021.
As I frantically search all my rosters that I'm in the leagues with Bradley to see if we own AJ Brown and Debo.
I mean, I'll definitely say when it comes to, to redraft, if you have the ability to make trades, you should be trading AJ Brown for Debo all day long.
100%.
I think we all see that.
So for me, I was looking at Scott's rankings last night, and this is what provoked the question or prompted the question. And he had Debo one slot above AJ Brown. And I at first I was like, oh, I don't like that. And then the more I thought about it, the more, it helps that I'm a Niner fan. It helps that I'm a truther. But the more I thought about it, I said, man, I actually really like this ranking. And I started looking more into statistics and 2.5 hours later and a bottle and a half more of wine, I came to the conclusion that I would take Debo in a trade all day in Dynasty. And
I think Billy was just trying to suck up to,
All right. Enough about Debo and the Niners. Lev Bell was released today. Now, will Bradley get his wish here, and will Tyson Williams be freed, or does this simply signify that Lat Murray's healthy and he was cut?
When you say and Tyson Williams will be freed, do you mean released or?
Oh my gosh. So let me just tell you some Tyson Williams stats, because I am a Tyson. There are truthers, but like to the death. Tyson Williams right now is second among all running backs in PFF pass block grade. Like all running backs.
He's 2 out of 2, by the way.
No, stop. All running backs. So he's really good at pass blocking. He deserves to be there on the field. He's 11th among running backs with 30 rushes or more in yards after contact per attempt. Running back 16 in fantasy points per opportunity. That's with running backs with 30 or more attempts. And RB 18 in fantasy points per rush attempt of those with 30 or more rushes. This is a player who, when on the field, is dynamic. He is a good pass blocker. He deserves to be on the field. And it's just mind-boggling why the Baltimore Ravens aren't giving this young, fresh-legged, dynamic player who can play on the field and deserves to stay on the field, not giving him playing time. And he's playing behind dusty old Devonta Freeman, Latavius Murray, and Lev Bell. So I hope so, but I doubt it.
Yeah, I'm with Bradley. I was a big Tyson Williams fan, but I don't think that the Baltimore Ravens coaching staff has any faith in him. In that Cincinnati blowout game, Tyson was used and looked pretty good, and he didn't see any uptick, following that one. So that was a little bit disconcerting. I think that this does mean that Lat Murray is healthy. I think that the fact that they haven't brought in a bunch of backs, to replace Lev Bell, or we haven't, heard about it, I think it means Lat Murray is. There you go, Wheeler. There you go.
Gotta love Wheeler, man.
You have to love it. That was a good one. But I think Lat Murray is healthy, and I think that it's going to be Devonta Freeman with some Lat Murray and, Tyson used sparingly. And I think it's disappointing because he was the back with the juice. He was the one that looked as good as any Ravens running back has looked all year in that opening Monday Night Football loss to Vegas. So it's disappointing what happened with Tyson, but I think it's a Murray situation.
All right, no more time on Tyson Williams. We're spending more time than he's going to get snaps on the field. So take a look at Devon. So I can't keep a straight face like that. Everyone, so D'Onta Foreman's next on the list here. A couple of weeks ago, I mentioned to Bradley, I don't think people should be so quick to add Adrian Peterson to their rosters. They're going to go out and blow all their money on Adrian Peterson in these big tournaments and in their leagues. And I think D'Onta Foreman is going to be the sneak, cheap, easy pickup that will eventually take over this backfield. Bradley and I have a little beer bet on the side as well. And it is Adrian Peterson. I took the under, so 70 minimum carries, 4.0 yards per carry. I'm starting to wonder if he'll even get to 70 carries because he may be cut before then. But that being said, who is the back to own moving forward in Tennessee? And tell me why it is D'Onta Foreman.
Of those three,
Shelly's ready to go.
Of those three, it's D'Onta Foreman, but I don't really think you want it like that. But put that in the desperation RB2 bucket for me. I don't think it's really going to be either. I think it's going to be back to the Tannehill, falling into the end zone. I think he did a little bit of that today after all those, phantom, roughing the passer and pass interference and whatever. I think you're going to get a lot more Tannehill. I think maybe you do get more AJ Brown. I think it's D'Onta Foreman. If I have to choose between those three, ideally I have another option on the roster because I don't think I really fully trust them in any of them.
JD, you're nodding. You agree?
Yeah, no, I do agree. I mean, look, you need like 8 guys to replace what Henry was giving you, right? So if people went in spending on AP or anyone in this backfield thinking they're getting that back, you're just fooling yourself. And that's a mistake I think a lot of players make. Dan and I in one league, I think Dan allowed me to put a bid on a Peterson. I think it was for like 199. We got him. This was a team where, we kind of needed that RB depth. There wasn't much else out there. We hadn't really, put any bids in, significant ones anyways. So we thought, why not take a chance? For me, the way I measure these situations is like, I'm never necessarily saying it's impossible for anyone to kind of take over the role. So maybe you want one AP. McNichols is a guy I have depth wise on a lot of my rosters just coming into the season, complimenting Henry. Maybe because he's a pass catcher, he gets more of a role if there's an injury. We've seen 1 week now where he's giving you RB2 against the Jets out of the 9 weeks. Foreman, for me, like Wheeler said, I remember a 2-touchdown game back in 2017 from this guy. And this is when he had the opportunity. This was his moment. And then the injury, and you never heard from him again. So I don't know that he necessarily look, he's getting the opportunity and he could totally prove me wrong. I always say we don't know shit, right? We don't know what this guy's going to do in the perfect opportunity. But in my opinion, I'm not spending money anywhere here. I'm looking somewhere else, similar to Andrew. If you want to add a depth piece, or like I said, you want to put a bid just to have one in your pocket, that's the extent of it for me in Tennessee's backfield.
So I'm a numbers guy. I take a look at the snaps. I liked Foreman more than AP just based upon youth. And when I look at Foreman and his running style prior to his Achilles injury when he was on Houston, it just reminded me more of the Derrick Henry style than AP's did. We joked around and said, hey, if they were going to add a 2-down back with brick hands, then it was great to add Adrian Peterson, because what better person to fill in for that Henry role. But all jokes aside, we saw a change of guard and snap count. So we saw, 35% snaps for Foreman last week, only 2 ticks above AP. But when it came to rush share is where Foreman made a difference. 37.9% rush share versus AP's 27.6%. And then 7.4% target share to AP's 3.7%. So double his target share. I think it's very clear, though, that McNichols is the odd man out here when it comes to anything on the ground. And through the air, Foreman is now threatening to take away some of that share as well. I agree. It's not like I don't feel comfortable sliding him into lineups. Don't get me wrong. I put him in a few last week out of desperation. But I think that if you are still in desperation, like say you were the Henry owner, say that you had Barkley, say that you had, a bunch of these running backs that you had relied on or were hoping to rely on and you didn't have for weeks and week out. Barkley's a bad example because he comes back next week, but you know what I'm saying? Like if you're in desperation, I think Foreman, could be better than some of these other names that are out there.
If anything, just to add, Billy, I'd rather, if you're going to even win a bid on one of these guys or you already have them for whatever reason, I would rather sell the news right now and, maybe build the hype that he's the next Derrick Henry on this offense somehow and go get yourself, I'll take a third, you know what I mean, for Foreman at this point.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Dynasty, no way, right? You're selling them however you can. But, I mean, when you're in tournament play right now, like I own 40% Foreman because I added him 2 weeks ago and I got him for $1 off all the waiver wires. Right. And it was just shooting for the moon. Right. You're hoping to just get even 60% of that Derrick Henry production. And I think you're not getting anything near it, but I think he has the best chance.
Billy was able to get 40% of share of Foreman because he was cutting 40% of his Darrington Evans. So.
Yeah,
right.
That's actually very true. So it was more like 56% Evans, though. It was.
Yeah, I was going to say 40 would be a little low. I'm guessing Billy was like 70%. At one point in this
I think it was just under 60. Actually, it was very depressing when you have the right mindset but pick the wrong person.
But this has been a heck of a comeback for Foreman. If you think about it, a couple of years ago, Foreman suffered a pretty terrible Achilles injury, and then he worked his way back. Last year, he did spend time on Tennessee as the backup to Henry, so he was familiar with the offense, and so it wasn't a surprise that he was signed from the practice squad here, and now has worked his way into a relative majority share of all of this offense in a pretty quick amount of time on the ground. But there was a lot of hype about 3 years ago over Donta Foreman before this Achilles injury. He hasn't been like super explosive except against the 5 runs against the Rams. But, I agree with everybody here. He's a spot start right now, and then in Dynasty an absolute sell if you can get anything for him.
He also had a bicep tear in 2019 that in preseason that kept him out of the entire season. So he's dealt with some couple issues.
Yeah, I was one of those Foreman truthers when he came out, for sure. And when he got the Achilles injury, it was just like, to me right now, until I see somebody actually come back and have, like a fantasy, like some really meaningful fantasy results. To me, the Achilles injury is still just the kiss of death. I'm just not touching it. Akers, he could be the one who proves me wrong, but I'm not going to touch him until he does. That's how I feel about it. I think Foreman's maybe in a spot where, he can at least get to semi-relevance now, and nobody's rooting harder for him than me. I would love to see him succeed. I mean, I liked him coming out. I would love to see, one of these running backs beat the Achilles, but, on the other hand, when I see the odds, I know, where my money's going to go right now. So, and all that is to say on this particular situation, yeah, I think Foreman's probably, the best bet moving forward. And for the most part, either you've got him or you don't. At least in the tournament leagues.
Yeah. And I think one thing that'll be interesting to me is, do the routes run and targets go up slightly for Foreman, which could make him a little more intriguing. McNichols dropped a touchdown pass that he should have caught in the end zone. It was a catch he needed to make, especially for a receiving back like himself. So it'll be interesting to see if Foreman's used just a little bit more as a receiver this weekend. I think that would be the key to him, being more of an RB2 than an RB3.
All right, the next question, Myles Gaskins, and everyone's thinking it.
Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in.
He's facing the Jets, and that's exactly what I thought about. I thought I was done with Myles Gaskin. I refuse to play this guy. I'm going to let other people beat me with him because I'm beating myself every single time I throw him in my roster. Dave and I have a 10K lead together. One is doing really well. The other one, on the other hand, has Myles Gaskin. And every time we throw him in the lineup, we get 5 points, 7 points, 8 points. And every time we bench this guy, he's getting 20, 30 points. And I swore him off last week. I said, Dave, we're never starting them again. And then I look at the schedule, and he's playing the Jets. So if you're Myles Gaskins owner, are you playing Myles Gaskins this week?
I think you have to, because the Jets have given up something like, 14 top 24 running back finishes. It's ungodly how running backs are doing against them. Matt Breida came out of nowhere and lit him up. So I think you have to begrudgingly use Myles Gaskin this weekend. I think it's a system play against a team that can't stop the running back.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I only own him in one place, and that one place that I own him, I really don't have any choice but to start him. So in a certain sense, that makes for a really easy decision. My other option is Chuba Hubbard. So
Chuba,
yeah, Chuba,
good old Canadian boy.
Yeah, which but really with Gask, any running back against the Jets, you ought to be throwing him in there. So I would give Gaskin as good a chance as anyone.
Yeah, I don't have any Gaskin anywhere, but you look at where he's scored his points. I mean, he's basically scoring against the weaker run defenses. So for me, he's a match play, I guess. I get what you're saying, Billy. There's always those guys, you put in the wrong week, those Mecole Hardman circa 2020 or 2019. Dan, what year was that?
Yeah, 2019.
We just could never get it right.
No.
You still can't get it right or the year right at that even. That's how bad it is with Mecole Hardman and those other players. You don't know if it's 2018, 19, 20, 21. If it's week 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You just don't know. Wheeler's spot on here. Ahmed's going to crush this week, and everyone's going to start Gaskin. Gaskin's going to just blow. Like, it's just one of those things, right? You just have to be prepared for. You can't make this shit up. It's gonna happen. All right, let's talk Eagles. Miles Sanders is slated to come off IR this week, back to the team. However, Eagles have won the last 2 out of 3 without him, and only lost to the Chargers by 3. Will Sirianni keep playing Howard and Scott, or how do you think this backfield shakes up with Howard, or with Sanders coming back?
I still like Miles Sanders as a player, and I know it's crazy talk. I think JD, you asked a question this weekend, and I'm like, hey, I'm here to give you the square take. Like I don't know who knows what the Sharps are doing, but sometimes I just can't get my brain. I mean, maybe it's like similar to the Gaskin thing. It's like I just can't get my brain off of Miles Sanders. That if he's healthy, I feel almost obligated to play him because for a large extent, I believe in his talent. I don't know if I believe that he's quite a football player yet. And I am choosing to believe the narrative. And again, JD, we don't know shit. I don't know anything, but I believe in the scenario of that offense is they found the way to get the offense to click. And that's not because he was out. They just needed everything else to gel. And so like the offense is clicking irrespective of like him being out. Like, it's not like he left and made them better addition by subtraction. So if we plug him in, I still feel good about him playing. Now, he's never going to 100% of the snaps. He's never going to 100% of the passes. That's just the way it is. But I'm going to feel confident enough to start him anywhere I have him this week.
Yeah. I'm with Andrew, man. He's my big. I've got like buy under right beside Sanders' name here. I mean, the 11th highest scoring offense. As much as it's a surprise, again, you want to tie your running backs to those high scoring offenses. The receivers are starting to develop nicely. I mean, Quez dropped that one in the end zone, which was a little heartbreaking. But I mean, him and Devontae look pretty good. So I mean, rest of the season, the schedule is looking pretty good. Miles comes back. Yeah, man, I'm buying right now. You know, again, RB is that position that we're talking Deontay Foreman guys. You know what I mean? So if I can go out and package a few of those guys that are running on hope more than what they're actually going to do on the field, I'll go and send that or invest into Sanders to take me the rest of the way. Sanders could easily be this year's Demont, which I also called last year. FYI, just pointing that out.
Yes, you did. I'm the same way on Sanders. I mean, to me, it's just, is the coaching staff going to use him? That is exactly the question, because when he gets touches, he produces. And, so if Sirianni can be troubled to use him to help win games, then, why not?
So I think a couple things about the Eagles backfield we got to keep in mind. One is that Jordan Howard has been productive for them, and he's been useful, and I don't think that role goes away completely. I think Boston Scott is the odd man out of that 3-man rotation. We're not even talking about Kenneth Gainwell, but Kenneth Gainwell seems to have fallen off the face of the planet too.
I think they come in tandems. Like Gainwell has to play with Sanders, and Scott has to play with Howard. And then if you remove one, the other two go in.
I like the secret I've been missing.
I honestly think you figured it out. You nailed it.
It's like Gaskin. You can only start him on even weeks or odd weeks. Even weeks he has bad weeks. Odd weeks he has good weeks. It's simple. It's simple logic.
Hashtag analysis.
I'm not even buying Sanders right now. I'm gonna wait a week because they're gonna face the New Orleans Saints, and the buy low is actually gonna be after he doesn't perform well in Week 11 against the Saints. The Saints have the second fewest running back points allowed per game so far.
But isn't the buy low going into New Orleans? Like for me, it's going into New Orleans. I'm selling that situation.
I think that there's just the psyche of the people who will put in Sanders in their lineup thinking that, yes, I'm going to start him, and then they get burned. And then
because if you're trading for a guy, aren't you looking at the schedule? And then if you see the Saints are next, you're like, oh, that's a write-off right there, right? So that you've already knocked off a point off of that player.
If you are, but I think that I'm waiting one more week to try to buy low on Sanders because I'm banking that person, they want to put him in. We believe in the talent. We saw him trending up in Week 5 against Carolina, 75% snap share. Week 6, 83% snap share. Week 7 against Vegas, before he went out like the first 5 minutes of the first quarter, he had 6 carries for 30 yards. And he had a target. This was a player who was very involved going into this injury. And I'm assuming that fantasy managers are going to be banking on him being utilized that way right into New Orleans. And I think they're going to be disappointed. So that's when I'm buying.
So I think we all agree here that Miles Sanders is by far the most talented back on this roster. And the question at bay is, do we trust Nick Sirianni to make the right decision, or do we believe that Nick Sirianni truly hates all of our fantasy teams and he's going to continue to run Jordan Howard, going to continue to involve whichever of the other two backs are going to be on the field at that given time, whether it's Gainwell or Scott, or who knows, maybe he wants to one up Bill Belichick and put all 4 on the field and just completely mess with our minds. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen. We're assuming, and quite frankly, one of them will be a healthy scratch. But, I mean, can we trust Nick Sirianni to give the ball to Sanders, or are we going to start seeing more of a timeshare between him and Howard on 1-2, because they elevated Howard to the 53-man roster? He's not going to be going back to the practice squad. They're going to have to release him. And so that being said, do you think that they would go that far to release Howard, or are they going to just run these two in tandem and both of them are going to be useless?
I think it's hard to trust Sirianni at all. I mean, I think rational coaching would be, Sanders comes back and gets 15 carries every single game. They want to run the football. They've had success doing it with him out. But I'm not so sure it's not just going to be an ugly committee situation where we don't have a whole lot of fantasy, goodness from any of those guys. I don't think they're going to put Jordan Howard away. I think Howard's looked good, and I think Sirianni will continue to use him. How much is anybody's guess, but I don't think he's going to disappear just because Sanders is back.
Yeah, we can't trust him to help on a player-specific basis. But good Lord, earlier tonight we've talked about Jeff Wilson, JaMychal Hasty, Donta Foreman, Jeremy McNichols,
right?
Latavius Murray,
Yes.
Tyson Williams. No, we got to play Miles Sanders. And I think I trust Nick Sirianni to the extent that he thinks he's got his offense in a groove. And therefore, I've got to start who I think is the best talent in the offense that the coach thinks he's got in a groove, and just cross my legs and hope for the best that something positive is going to happen.
So there's a reason why we talk about all these players that nobody else really wants to talk about, right? Because you hear a lot of these podcasts go out there and they're saying, go get AJ Dillon off your waiver wire. I don't know about you guys. There's not a single damn league I'm in, and I'm in 214.
That's when you unsubscribe.
Yeah, that AJ Dillon is on my waiver wire. If AJ Dillon's on your waiver wire, 1, invite me to your league. 2, just leave because you're not playing in a competitive league. Find a league that as you're playing against people who are going to make you better, that you're going to learn more about football, because AJ Dillon should not have been on waiver wires. So that being said, he now steps into the lead role here for the Packers. Who is the handcuff? And these are the way I like asking these questions. So I like talking about JaMychal Hasty. I like talking about Jeff Wilson, because these are the type of players that win you $500,000 in the FFPC. These are the type of players that are going to help your team down the stretch when you get into these shootout matches. It's always somebody. Every year it happens. We had Raheem Mostert a couple years ago, and somebody always emerges. So is one of those emergencies that to come from the Packers? Who's backing up AJ Dillon now moving forward?
I think it's Taylor.
Patrick Taylor?
I mean, I don't believe in Kerryon Johnson at all. If that's they're going to bring him off the street. I think it's going to be an overwhelming amount of AJ Dillon. And I think that if you have AJ Dillon, the next few weeks are going to be a lot of fun. Dan made a great point about the Packers organization downplaying injuries. Dillon is going to give you a lot more usefulness than some people think. And it's going to be longer than some people think. And I'm sure Dan can elaborate on that. But I think there's also a situation where we've seen Dillon cut into Jones a great deal. And I think that Dillon, if he smashes the next few weeks, I think Jones will come back and really get his receiving work. But I think Dillon's going to be the one, if you had to pick one or the other, who you would start. I think it's Dillon. I think Dillon is a league winner right now. And to get back to Billy's point about people saying to take Dillon off the waiver wire, we were standing on our head if we could get Dillon in the 9th round in leagues we were drafting in. So, I mean, there's a real disconnect in fantasy football podcasts right now. You're on a really good one now with these guys. But anybody telling you to pick up A.J. Dillon off their waiver wire, you know, I might as well tell you to go play scratch-off games or something like that because they're not helping you at all. Yeah, 4-man leagues. There you go. And Dan, maybe you could talk a little bit about the Packers organization because I thought it was a great call you made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, just their history. You know, you take out the concussion that Devontae Adams had, which apparently the Packers medical staff does not believe in brain injuries, but they believe in everything else. So that was
they believe in fake stocks as well.
That was a head scratcher. But you know, other than that, I mean, you know, like when Aaron Jones has been out before, you know, they've given him like a 3 or 4 week timeline, and he's out 6 or 7 weeks. Same thing with Devontae Adams. I believe we've seen the same thing with Aaron Rodgers. I mean, they're just really, really cautious about bringing players back too early. They really don't seem to want to bring them back until they're, you know, absolutely at full strength. So, you know, for me, I'm thinking Dillon is going to definitely be starting the next 2 weeks. Then you have Green Bay's bye. After that, really anything could happen. I mean, you know, I wouldn't be surprised to see Aaron Jones back after that, but I also wouldn't be surprised to see them wait 1 more week, you know, just to be sure, because that would be like a very Packer thing to do, you know. And so the nice thing about Dillon is he doesn't have to compete with A.J. Dillon. He only has to compete with, you know, Patrick Taylor or whoever it happens to be. You know, so I think he's probably going to be even more valuable than Aaron Jones would have been during these next couple of weeks at least.
Good.
Oh, as the resident Packers fan, Dan, I totally agree with that point. It's actually been frustrating from time to time, hoping that the Packers would get these players back on the field, but in fact, they don't. They just don't. They're a very conservative team when it comes to those injuries. I agree. And the initial report about Aaron Jones was, he's going to be out 1 to 2 weeks with a meniscus. The average like time frame for a meniscus is 4 to 6 weeks. So I don't know where they're getting this timeline from. It's going to be closer. If I were taking a bet, it'd be closer to the 6 week timeline for Aaron Jones. And I don't know who's behind Dillon. Like Patrick Taylor could be Raquel Armstead. I mean, we heard Kerryon Johnson might be coming in. Armstead was out all of last year and hospitalized due to COVID symptoms and COVID complications. So I don't know how much like we can trust like his full recovery. At least he's made the practice squad. But Patrick Taylor right now, I think, has the edge as the handcuff to A.J. Dillon at this point. He got the 2 carries behind Dillon in the Packers game. And I think they're going to ride A.J. Dillon. There's going to be a low passing volume offense. A.J. Dillon, the Boston College product, 2nd round pick. Head scratcher, to be honest. As a Packers fan, I was not pleased that they drafted him that early, but there was a lot wrong with the 2020 draft. Don't even get me started. Billy, you need to cut me off here.
Do we know if it's sorry, does anyone know if it's a partial tear or like a full tear on the meniscus? Because I think that makes a difference on the timeline.
Partial.
And I think that one's longer.
I thought I heard MCL, but I haven't really.
MCL is what I heard as well.
Oh, okay. I thought he said meniscus. Sorry, my bad.
So Bradley, you're the resident Packer fan, but I'm the resident Mike Norvell fan. Now, why does that matter? And who the hell is Mike Norvell? You may be asking yourself.
I was asking
Great
myself
question.
that.
Davis Maddock had a tweet about this. Mike Norvell is the Florida State football coach. Why does that matter? 2018, he was the Memphis football coach. Now, I've been trying to tell myself, Andrew, it's okay. Florida State sucks so bad. But it's okay because look what Mike Norvell did at Memphis. He had all of our favorite Darrell Henderson, Tony Pollard, who's the other, Antonio Gibson, and Patrick Taylor. Now, David, this is the only research I did for your show, Muzio. Davis Maddock tweeted out, and it wasn't even my research. I hit like. That was my research for this show. I hit like. I will now dictate to everyone a tweet that somebody else wrote. True story about Packers running back Patrick Taylor, who just got his first NFL touch. In 2018 at Memphis, go Noles, He shared a backfield with Darrell Henderson, Tony Pollard, and all caps, Antonio Gibson, and had 1,400 yards and 18 touchdowns. Patrick Taylor.
That sounds good to me.
Patrick Taylor is the pick here because Billy just roasted me, even though I was not really roasting. We talked about earlier. He said, AJ Dillon, if he's available. No, I'm telling you, this is the research I came with. Patrick Taylor, he's going to be your league winner.
I love
Bradley,
it.
I just got you fired up for your guy. Go,
Let's
Mike
go.
Go Noah World.
I love it. Although
I know
to
you
be,
did.
To be
I know
fair,
you.
Antonio Gibson was a wide receiver at that point.
And I know that you did.
Because
I know that
of
you did
Patrick
one
Taylor.
more.
Because of Patrick Taylor.
And
can
Shelly's
we pour-
lying.
can we
He
pour
did one more
up?
bit of research because I'm going to ask him one question. He doesn't know the answer. Who's in first in our FBG league that I was?
Not me. But
The
I'm
league,
also
the
not
league
the
that
right
I
yet.
slept through the first 4 rounds.
Can we also pour one out for? We talked Darrington Evans. Can we also mention Kylan Hill, who was the player that everyone was drafting,
Yes.
and this would be the ultimate situation where this would be Kylan Hill, cash in type week.
Yes. So we can talk about Kylan Hill. Another player that we own so much of. Just didn't think that Dylan was going to be the answer, and then, boom, it's over. Right?
Kylan Hill's the reason I don't play Devy anymore.
There you go.
I played 1 year. He's the only guy I picked up, and it was a waste of a pick.
All right, guys. Well, I know you guys have another podcast here shortly. I want to get you guys off so you have time to grab more beer, get ready for the show. But I want to say thank you all for joining. It was a great time having all of us together. So everybody that's watching, make sure to follow the GOAT District here, as well as each one of their individual Twitter accounts. Theo can be found at the OG Fantasy. Dan can be found at Overhyped Sleeper. And again, these are all on the screen, so if you are looking, you can see the spelling because I'm not going to sit here and spell them all out. Shelly can be found at AM Schellenberg, and then JD can be found at GOAT District. And they have another phenomenal podcast that is designated to high stakes and great football talk. So one of the few podcasts that I watch on a regular basis. And I just want to say thank you, boys, for joining us. It was a pleasure having you on.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome
Appreciate
being
it,
on.
Billy.
Yep.
Thank you, Billy. Thank you, Bradley.
Thanks, Brad.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
All righty. We're going to end the show here, everybody, but make sure to join us back on Friday when we start talking about our rankings heading into Sunday, even though I've had 2 bad weeks in a row because shit's upside down. But we will see you all back here Friday. Have a good night.